Donald Trump's administration has racked up more scandals than any presidency in American history. And yes, that includes the flaming tire fire he ran last time. So nobody should be shocked that tonight he's being nuked by yet another one. And absolutely no one should be shocked that this latest mess confirms what we've all known from day one. Donald Trump is Vladimir Putin's hand puppet, strings and all. Now, normally, a cornered president drowning in one of the worst foreign policy scandals we've ever seen might hope his own team would sprint to the barricades and help him spin his way out of it. But not this crew. Because J.D. Vance, in all his wisdom, has managed to let a leaked call detonate right under Trump's feet, exposing and confirming Trump's secret little plot. We're going to break down the whole thing. But before we play Trump's call, we need the context from someone who understands just how dangerous this really is, maybe even more dangerous than Trump's past episodes of Putin puppetry. And that comes from Senator Mark Warner right here.
It feels like this was a plan that they took almost entirely from the Russians, did no consultation with Congress, no consultation with the Europeans, obviously didn't read in Zelensky and the Ukrainians, and now they're getting ferocious pushback. So one more time, Trump is changing his deadlines. Of course, how he picked Thanksgiving to start with, I have no idea. But now, even with this this back and forth that it's not really an American plan, or is it an American plan? This is the kind of chaos that unfortunately represents so much of the Trump foreign policy.
So what do you think President Zelensky should do? He's been through this before. It's kind of back and forth with this White House. They support you, they pull it back. Do you think all of this proposal, which seems to heavily favor Russia, is that just a starting point?
Well, I would hope.
Again.
I would hope so. The Ukrainians have performed magnificently in the field. They are reinventing the nature of warfare in terms of use of drones. To have this proposal forced upon them, I think, as Zelensky said, Ukrainian dignity versus giving up a partner. I would hope the president would not be so weak as to try to force this plan on the Ukrainians and our other allies. It would, I think, send not only a horrible signal for Europe, but the person who's watching this probably the most closely is President Xi in China.
Donald Trump is taking his talking points straight from Putin, and at this point, even pretending otherwise is just cosplay for the terminally gullible. Russian state TV used to joke that Trump sounded like he was reading off a Kremlin cue card. Turns out that wasn't satire. It was a programming note. This isn't the fever dream of some wigged-out liberal with Trump derangement syndrome. This is what's actually happening in broad daylight. And Caroline Leavitt, Marco Rubio, and the rest of Trump's little court chorus were out there before this reporting dropped, dutifully cooing about what a wonderful peace plan this was, knowing full well it wasn't a peace plan at all, but a full-scale surrender gift wrap for Moscow. They didn't care. They pushed the script anyway, and they're still pretending none of it happened. Sure, Vance blew the whole thing to pieces, but before he did, just listen to what Scott Bessent had to say.
You just talked about the president's peace deals. Let's talk about Ukraine. U.S. lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, Ukrainian officials who I've spoken to, say the peace plan for Russia and Ukraine, as written, only benefits Russia. Let me ask you simply, Mr. Secretary, was this 28-point plan written by Russia?
I have no information on that, Kristen, but I can tell you I am the highest-ranking U.S. official to have visited Ukraine. I went last February. And when I went last February, I went with an economic cooperation agreement between the U.S. and Ukraine. President Zelensky pushed back against it. The same people you're just talking about there pushed back against it. Mainstream media pushed back against it. You know what? We did it 3 months later.
And what an absolutely bizarre non-answer from Scott Bessent, though, frankly, at this point, we should all be numb to the weirdness. This is the same guy who asked Kristen Welker how much she weighed on national television. When pressed on inflation, he launched into some creepy anecdote about her stepping on a scale every morning. If you didn't see that clip, please don't. It's as grotesque as it sounds. Bessent refuses to give an actual answer here because, in this administration, saying anything real is more dangerous than dodging with nonsense. Under Trump, the lies mutate by the hour. The spin gets rewritten before they finish the sentence. But one thing they can't dodge is the hard reporting about the panic ripping through Trump world right now. And interestingly enough, the panic doesn't include Pete Hegseth, because this all unfolded last night when Vance's leaked call started circulating, detailing just how freaked out everyone is that Republicans in Congress are now turning on Donald Trump. Just look at this tweet. Margaret Brennan's reporting is, let's just say, very interesting when it comes to Vance. Margaret Brennan just posted on Twitter, a senior White House official told CBS that there was a call last night held by Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, along with Army Secretary Driscoll and U.S. military leadership, in order to answer questions from some concerned lawmakers. There were also separate phone calls made by Secretary Rubio, as Shaheen King and Rounds detailed on the record at Halifax, and Ron Filipski of Midas Touch responded to this by writing, "It was a Saturday night, so it was pretty likely Hegath was in no condition to participate." I think Ron Filipkowski is pretty much dead on that Pete Hegseth probably had a little Pete Keg breath last night, and that's why he couldn't drag himself onto this call. But the rest of it is fascinating. We now know Donald Trump has decided that J.D. Vance is his Ukraine-Russia war. That's the job. Trump even announced, hilariously, that J.D. Vance, a couple months ago, was going to handle the fallout from tariffs, which are inflation, by the way, Donald, and he was also magically going to solve the war in Ukraine. This from the same guy who swore the war would never have happened under him if he'd somehow beaten Joe Biden instead of getting the brakes beat off him in 2020. And now the grand day one peace plan, remember that fantasy? Has been tossed in J.D. Vance's lap. So now J.D. Vance is doing frantic cleanup duty for a president who quietly swallowed Russian talking points whole and tried to pass them off as strategy, a strategy that's basically Ukraine surrendering. And how's J.D. running interference? Horribly. Republican senators and members of Congress are going on the record calling it a disgrace. Some are openly demanding firings. They're not whispering anymore, they're yelling. Republicans are furious. They're calling it an embarrassment. Even Lindsey Graham called it problematic. And when Lindsey Graham is the one piping up Lindsey Graham, you know it's bad. So how'd JD's little diplomacy tour in the Senate go? Pretty piss poor. And honestly, the idea that calling in J.D. Vance is the big gun in a moment like this is comedy. When Kamala Harris became VP, she'd already spent years in the Senate. Biden, Obama, masters of the chamber. Even Mike Pence had time in the House. J.D. Vance, he was in the Senate for 3 weeks before becoming vice president. 3 weeks. So imagining him whipping votes and smoothing senators like some seasoned authority, please, half these guys probably haven't shared more than a hallway head nod with him. I don't know what Trump was thinking. I don't know what Vance was thinking. But this leaked call lays bare the panic inside the machine and how totally incapable JD was at corralling anyone. MAGA is splintering wherever you look. Foreign policy, the Epstein files, everything. And foreign policy is only the start. While Marjorie Taylor Greene is still immoral and absolutely untrustworthy, even she managed to articulate one accurate criticism. We've sold our souls and handed the Israeli government whatever it wants as it carries out mass slaughter. That critique is legitimate, especially while a U.S. citizen is literally sitting in an Israeli prison right now. There's a ton of foreign policy chaos crashing down at once, but I think you really need to hear this part right here.
I want to tell you about a 16-year-old American citizen by the name of Mohammed Ibrahim. Right now, he is sitting in a jail in Israel. He has been beaten. He has been abused. In the middle of the night, about 8 months ago, Israeli forces came and snatched him from his family's home on the West Bank. The reports that we've gotten, including reports from some U.S. embassy officials, is that he's lost a lot of weight. We also know from others who have had a chance to meet with him that he was beaten up. And this is an American kid, so you would think that the United States government would be doing everything possible to secure his release, but they're not. After all, we have a very close relationship with Israel. United States taxpayers provide billions of dollars to the Netanyahu government and the state of Israel. You would think that we would be able to get this American kid out of prison, certainly to make sure that he doesn't get abused and beaten up in prison. So it's long past due that President Trump and Secretary Rubio, Master Huckabee, do what we say is the number one responsibility of our embassies overseas, which is to protect American citizens.
Senator Chris Van Hollen is absolutely right. The U.S. should have cut off the weapons pipeline to Israel a long time ago. The bombs, the blank check, billions, all of it. And that's true even before Donald Trump's so-called peace plan, which, of course, never materialized because Israel continues to kill Palestinians indiscriminately. It's an apartheid state. Nothing about that changes just because Trump drawings boarded some fantasy about diplomacy. There is zero justification for sending them money, especially while one of our own citizens is sitting in an Israeli prison being tortured. Everyone should be talking about this. The silence in Congress is disgraceful. Why are we sending a country our tax dollars to pay for their free college, their free health care, and every other state-sponsored program they enjoy when we don't even have that here at home? Why are we subsidizing their social safety net while they break international law, carry out mass killings, hold our citizen hostage, and torture him? It doesn't track on policy, ethics, morality, on anything. It's grotesque, and it deserves to be called out. And look, I don't want to hand out credit where it isn't earned, but it is true that Marjorie Taylor Greene has been loud on this specific issue that doesn't redeem her. But it does matter, especially as the Israeli government's ties to Epstein keep getting more sunlight. Yes, we should be talking about all this. We should be tearing apart the rotten foreign policy choices that got us here. And no, this didn't suddenly become a disaster under Trump, although he's certainly poured gasoline on every existing fire. But the person hitting this the hardest right now, and doing it without self-serving theatrics, is Jason Crow. One of the few Democrats Trump has personally gone after, even said should be killed, and he's still standing up and calling Trump out directly. And he did it right here.
We spent $3 trillion, lost 7,000 service members' lives, and those ended poorly. Congress has to make that decision. Congress needs to be accountable for it. And Congress needs to be debating this before the American people, going to the American people and telling them why they should send their sons and daughters into conflict, and they should spend hundreds of billions of dollars of their hard-earned money. This president doesn't want that process to happen. And as somebody that did 3 combat tours in these wars, I've had enough of Congress being cut out of it.
We need to be much louder in calling out so much of what is happening in this administration. And I can promise you, we are going to be on this show and very unapologetic in doing so.